going to people that didn't show up in the game for the Dallas Stars. I originally made a list about, it's called the No-Show Club, and it's basically where players go to hang out because they don't feel like showing up to their playoff games.
Historically, if you look at his stats, I think there's only one or two defensemen that have a higher point per game average in the playoffs than Bouchard. Do you want to guess who those two are?
Bringing up in the post-game presser that you pulled him because he lost 6-7 to Edmonton.
That's bullshit.
That is bullshit, and that's why I'm thinking, would you start Casey Smith in Game 6? No, the fuck you would not.
No.
Welcome back to the Checking From Behind podcast. I'm your host, Zach, as always, joined by my co-host, Preston. Today we're recording on May 31st, 2025. The NHL Conference Finals just concluded. We're getting into our Stanley Cup predictions later in this episode. We have a lot to unpack, a ton of news, and, of course, if you want to start us off.
So I just want to say, all year I've been doubted over and over and over again for my commitment to the Edmonton Oilers. They have not let me down. You know, during the preseason, I picked them to win the Stanley Cup. Mid-season, I picked them to win the Stanley Cup. I was laughed at when we were doing our playoff predictions when I was the only one that predicted that they would beat the Kings. I was literally laughed at. Who's laughing now? If you're not loyal to Oil, get the fuck out.
But I do have Edmonton winning the cup. All the pressure in the world's on them, and I think McDavid will handle it okay. I mean, last year, before the season started, he said it's cup or bust for them, and they got one game away from winning that cup. I think they could do it this year.
I also laughed at you for beating them, for having them over Vegas. I also laughed at you for having them over Dallas.
Keep doubting them.
The Dallas
Keep doubting
one
them.
was rational because they were my preseason Western Conference
I get
pick.
you had some heart in that one, but I think Edmonton was a bad matchup for Dallas.
Yeah.
I keep hearing a lot of discourse about, if it was the Jets versus Edmonton, would it have been a more competitive series? And we'll never know the answer to that. But I think there's a lot of reasons why Dallas lost the series, so we can get into that in a little bit.
First off, congratulations to the Edmonton Oilers for making it back to the Stanley Cup Finals. I'll get into the clip that surfaced later. I'm not going to get into that now. But McDavid said he'd be back, and he's back a year later, and he's back off for vengeance, and he can be, would it be the third player that would go to the first Stanley Cup and then end up playing the same team and possibly winning it? Because you had Crosby do it, you had Gretzky, and McDavid had a chance.
I mean, there's been more players that have done that, but those are two iconic guys.
Oh, you're right, because you think of every player that basically played on those teams.
Yeah, there's been several guys that but to do it, that's how Wayne Gretzky did it, and that's how Sidney Crosby did it. And I'm getting really big shades of that between this whole playoffs, because it kind of felt inevitable. Like after the Oilers did what they did to the Kings, and the Oilers were dead. They were down 2-0. They looked like they were getting outplayed. Stuart Skinner couldn't make a save. The defense looked awful, and they completely switched up their system. And Florida, we thought Tampa would give them a good challenge. They rolled over them. I can't believe Toronto pushed them to 7 games. I think that was more of Florida not playing their best the first 2 games of that series, more than Toronto really outplaying them, because the games that Toronto lost, they got their ass kicked.
Florida ended up winning one of those first 2 games. The series could possibly be over in 5.
I mean,
you never know.
You got to remember too, in Game 3 of that series, Florida won in overtime, and that was really the changer, because if Toronto went up 3-0, I don't think they were going to blow a 3-0 lead.
It's over.
But Florida, I think they got healthy too. Going into the Stanley Cup Final, which is kind of unheard of. Luosterainen, I believe, is injured right now for them, but they got Sam Reinhart back and Nikola and a couple other guys back. At the end of the series for the conference finals, you got a long break going into the Stanley Cup Final, which doesn't start till Wednesday, June 4th. So both teams get a nice little break. Gonna be weird. The conference finals are really quick, really quick.
Both series were over in 5 games.
They were not really competitive.
And they weren't. I want to start a discourse, by the way. Why doesn't the NHL start training camp earlier, like 2 weeks earlier, start the regular season 2 or 3 weeks earlier? We don't need 7 to 8 preseason games. And I don't think we need the Stanley Cup Finals starting past June 1st and ending 6 days before the draft, because then you go straight from the finals. Let's say it goes a full 7 games again, right? You have 5 days to turn around. You have,
Oh, I love that.
and then you get straight into the draft and in free agency. Like, just give the teams 2 seconds to freaking breathe.
I love it as a fan. Because it was crazy last year. You know, you had the Stanley Cup Final. I think literally like 3 or 4 days later, the draft, and then literally 3 or 4 days, like I think like 2 days later was free agency. Like I felt bad for the team, the front office, because they were busy, but that's their job. Even if you're on a deep playoff run like the Oilers or the Panthers, you know, you have scouts that are still working. They're not going to be at the games. Like the GM can focus on being in the games, but you know, it's got to be a little distracting, especially like you're on a team on a deep playoff run, to meet with scouts and have, you know, pre-draft meetings and talk about free agency when your team's in the midst of a cup run. But at the same time, they didn't really have a lot of picks to worry about.
Not only that, but you're not really worried about roster building while your team is on a playoff run, because
but you have guys you hired. Like, you have pro scouts, you have amateur scouts that's their job to put together a list, come up with some ballpark numbers of what a guy might be looking for on the market.
And it could be a thing where and I'm assuming it's an everyday thing, or, you know, a couple times a week. I don't know. I'm not in an NHL front office, but being at, like, you know, would it be a war room table or just like a meeting room, whatever, sitting down with the GM and whoever else the scouts and talking about pre-draft stuff, especially if the Panthers and the Oilers, let's say it's game 4, right? Game 4 is just over the finals. You have a week and a half until the draft. Obviously, they do scouting stuff throughout the entire year, but really sitting down and trying to hone in which guys at our draft pick do we want to target at each one, who is on the draft board at each pick, whatever. And that would be kind of hectic. We talked about it last year going into the finals too, about how hectic it must be for a general manager and front offices to be in the middle of a cup run, get to the Stanley Cup Finals, and the turnaround from game 7 to the finals. Like, okay, now we have the draft right away. We have 2 days to celebrate the cup win. And it's like, all right, we're going.
I think the Panthers had an extended celebration because I don't think they had a first, second, or third round pick in the draft last year, and the draft was in Vegas.
Yeah.
So have fun.
It's a win-win situation for them.
Yeah.
Genuinely. Let's get into the conference finals a little bit.
We got a little sidetracked.
We're going to start with the Edmonton and Dallas series. The Oilers win that 4-1. Overall, what I took from the series is the Oilers were the better team. This was not a Dallas shot themselves in the foot. They got outplayed. And overall, I thought Edmonton deserved to win the series from the opening.
Yeah, they were the better team.
Yeah.
I think they had one bad period in game 1, which led them to lose that game. Got into penalty trouble, and that was insane. That whole sequence when the Stars scored 3 power play goals in a row to end up winning that game. But other than that, Edmonton really dominated the series. I don't think the Dallas scored first in any game in this series. Edmonton just ripped their souls out. They shut down their best players. You know, there's a lot of talk going about Jake Ottinger, and, you know, if he was a non-factor in this series. And I would say, you know, he was a non-factor. They didn't lose because of him, but he was playing fine. He played good enough.
He played okay, and I want to pass a lot of the blame to the Dallas Stars defense. They did not help him out, and I thought him getting pulled in Game 5, I get trying to send a message to your team. The 2 goals that he allowed on his 2 shots,
he had no shot.
His defense just evacuated the front of the net.
Yeah, no, they can't happen. I mean, the first goal Corey Perry scored was a really good tip-in, really good play by McDavid. The second goal, Mark scored on a quick breakaway in their own zone. That was just a complete defensive breakdown. He can't get that loose in your own zone. I thought it was a very emotional decision by Peter DeBoer, and it didn't really get him going because then Edmonton scored again in a few minutes. And, you know, but the way the Oilers are playing right now, once they're up 3-0, you know they're not going to lose that game. They're not giving up 4 goals to lose that game.
And I thought about this. If Dallas ended up pulling that game out of their ass and they forced a Game 6, is this something where you have to go back to Andre? Because a couple of quotes stood out to me about the board. Bringing up in the post-game presser that you pulled him because he lost 6 of 7 to Edmonton. That's
bullshit.
That is bullshit. And that's why I'm thinking, would you start Casey Smith in Game 6? No, the fuck you would not.
No. Jake Ottinger is a top 10 goalie in the league. You play him every game.
Exactly. So what he said, that's a bullshit excuse.
He's throwing Ottinger under the bus. Like, it's not, if there's any player on the Dallas Stars the blame is not Jake Ottinger. Like I said, I don't think he really had any really bad games. Like he wasn't like playing out of his mind, but he was good enough for them to win. The Stars couldn't fucking score.
They couldn't score. They couldn't play defense. I want to get to that in a second, but going to the Boers post-game 5 quote on pulling Ottinger, I didn't blame it all on Jake, but the reality is, if you go back to last year's playoffs, he lost 6 of 7 games at Edmonton, and we gave up 2 goals on 2 shots in an elimination game. That is a bullshit excuse. And what I've also heard is that, A, the Boers job is completely safe. The rumors of him getting fired are not true. In the what would it be? The end of season press conferences, the owner said that the Boer is not going anywhere. And I've also heard that Ottinger is not happy with Pete DeBoer and that there's a possible chance that Jake Ottinger is disgruntled right now, which he should be. And also the Dallas Stars would choose DeBoer over Ottinger any day of the week.
That's kind of bold. You know, I think DeBoer is a good coach. You know, he has a track record of getting teams on deep playoff runs. He's never won a Stanley Cup. He's been to 6 conference finals
in the last 7 seasons,
and he's won one of them. No,
yes,
with
no,
the Sharks.
The Sharks.
He also got to a Stanley Cup final in 2012 with the New Jersey Devils. That was over 10 years ago. So technically, he's been at the conference final 7 times, and he's won twice. And he has not won a Stanley Cup.
I have stats for you. Speaking of. So, what has he done in his Western Conference Finals appearances since 2018? Let's take a look. With the Sharks in 2018-19, lost in 6 to the Blues. Golden Knights in 19-20, they lost in 5. And in 2021, they also lost in 6 with those same Golden Knights. In all 3 of those seasons with Dallas, he has lost in 6 his first 2 seasons, then lost in 5 this season. That is 10 wins in 6 Western Conference Finals series. His teams average 1.6 wins per Western Conference Finals series. That is pathetic. That is, I get, you bring it up all the time. He is a coach you want to have if you want to get close enough. That this isn't acceptable.
Well, I think Vegas is a great example. Is like they were great when he was coaching them. They were a great regular season team. They had deep playoff runs. They let him go. They bring in Bruce Cassidy, and they win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah,
like Bruce Cassidy I think is a better coach than him, and he made the little differences. Obviously, they bring in a guy like Jack Eichel who makes a huge difference on that Cup run, but. You know, coaching matters, and I think Peter DeBoer is a great coach. And I understand why Dallas would want to keep him. I just think I really don't like what he said, the Jake Ottinger thing, and I can't blame Jake for being pissed off about this. I'd be shocked I'd be more worried if he wasn't pissed off, because to get completely thrown under the bus like that by your head coach, who's supposed to have your back no matter what, is honestly bullshit.
And I think that Pete DeBoer was saving his own ass.
I don't like that.
He knows.
Even if I'm not Jake Ottinger, I'm a player on that team, and you see your coach saying that about your teammate, like your goalie, who's like the quarterback of your team, like that's bullshit.
I bet you he knows deep down he made an emotional decision. He regrets it in a way, but he doesn't want to make it seem like his fault. So he's like, yeah, I'm gonna blame it on the goalie. Like that's bullshit. And I've also heard too that some players in the locker room, he's losing some of them.
Yeah, especially vets who have been around for a while. Like, this is the guy, especially guys that have been in Dallas for the last 3 years, to be in 3 conference finals in a row and lose them all. It can be disheartening, especially like the older guys like Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin, who have been in the league forever, aren't going to be in the league much longer. Matt Duchene, it's got to be tough for them to keep getting this far and lose every year. Yeah,
it mentally, physically, it's just so taxing on you. And going to people that didn't show up in the game for the Dallas Stars, I originally made a list it's called the No-Show Club, and it's basically where players go to hang out because they don't feel like showing up to their playoff games. But that was everybody but Ottinger and Miro Heiskanen. I originally just put down Mikko Rantanen.
Jason Robertson was okay.
Yeah, I have Jason.
Roope Hintz was okay too when he played.
I do have on this list, so I'm just going to list off the list that I originally had. Mikko Rantanen, Wyatt Johnson, you can go golfing. You were minus fucking 20. Matthew Shane.
He was a minus 20 in the Western Conference Final.
In the playoffs.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Matthew Shane, Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, Esa Lindell, Jason Robertson in every game he played except games 4 and 5. And I go, actually, everyone but Harley and Heiskanen. Also, Hintz is excused because of his foot injury.
There was I don't remember exactly what the play was. There was a great clip I saw where they were talking about like Miro Heiskanen specifically, where he had a really good play where he pushed a guy to the outside did everything was supposed to do. Then Cody Ceci just was like at another rink seemingly, and just left the guy wide open in front of the net, and Edmonton scores an easy goal. Like it's like I don't know what Heiskanen's supposed to do. He's doing everything you want out of your defenseman, and then your partner's just like, "Hey, what's going on, man? You want to score? Go right ahead."
Served it on a silver platter.
I mean, that's got to be frustrating though, because you're playing your ass off, and then Cody Ceci's gonna keep catching strays, but he was dog shit, completely awful.
He was bad. He was so bad.
Yeah, and was Lyubushkin hurt? Was there a reason he wasn't playing?
I don't know.
Because CC came into the lineup for him.
I want to say Lyubushkin got hurt.
Yeah, because I noticed he didn't play the last few games of the Western Conference Final. I wasn't sure if he
Unless
was just
Pete
a healthy
DeBoer-
scratch or.
Yeah, he had that's why. Okay, no, we're not using that. We're just use his injuries. Originally, the AI thing brought up, but
AI
no,
thing's not
he
right.
was not hurt. Nope.
So is it the healthy scratch?
His last injury was an upper body injury on February 4th. He suffered.
So Peter DeBoer willingly chose to put Cody Ceci in his lineup over Lyubushkin, who I think is better and more physical.
There's no way in hell he was watching the playoffs and was like, let's throw in Cody Ceci instead.
I mean, he did. He did it for 3 games. Can we talk a minute about just how impressive the Oilers have been? Like, I know I gloated a little bit earlier about being right about them, but I even have my doubts about them, especially, after those first 2 games against the Kings where it didn't look like Stuart Skinner could stop a beach ball, and the defense was just horrible. Like, game 1 was only close because Connor McDavid, like, literally put the cape on, and, like, that goal he scored to tie the game, but still might be the best goal in the playoffs.
Might be the best goal of the season.
That was insane.
That was ridiculous.
I mean, and then they had immediately blowing the game like 30 seconds later to lose the game in regulation. But just the adjustments they've made. Calvin Pickard was good enough to get the team through, and
He
then
sacrificed himself.
Stuart Skinner comes back, and he's. I have to say he didn't have an amazing game in Game 5 against Dallas, but other than that, since he's gotten back, he's been lights out.
But you know what? That Pickard and Skinner have done this playoffs. Doesn't matter what happens. Doesn't matter how the game's going. They just have made one more save than the opposing goalie, and they don't care.
At the end of the day, that's all you need.
Exactly. All that matters in the playoffs is W. Doesn't have to be pretty. It could be. They could allow 6 goals a game, but guess what? If you're getting the W, that's all that matters. You first team to 16 wins, hoist the Lord Stanley. So
another player that completely turned around his playoffs was Evan Bouchard. Like, he was a defensive straight up liability in most of the first round, and he's been arguably their best defenseman.
I've heard that at the start of the playoffs, his AAV would have come around $8 million. Now
it's got to be double digits. It's got to be up over 10 million.
10 to 10.5 now.
Yeah, he's going to get paid. I mean, historically, if you look at his stats, I think there's only 1 or 2 defensemen that have a higher point per game average in the playoffs than Evan Bouchard. You want to guess who those 2 are?
Bobby Orr.
Yep.
Cale Makar.
No, not Cale Makar. I think it was Mike Bossy.
Mike Bossy. Okay. And also
or Paul Coffey. Paul Coffey. Yeah, Paul Coffey.
Another crazy stat too is that his points per game jump from the regular season to the playoffs is the highest.
He locks in the playoffs.
It's the highest of all time in NHL history.
I mean,
it's crazy.
Those Bushbombs, they're lethal, man.
Dude, he's ridiculous.
Ryan Nugent-Hopkins,
yes,
I thought was great in
you.
the conference final, especially with Zach Hyman, unfortunately going to miss the Stanley Cup final due to injury. He had to have surgery. Nuge is going to have to be really, really good. And he stepped up in the Western Conference Final after kind of not really being a factor in the first 2 rounds. He was excellent in the conference final.
If they get Nuge that they got in the Western Conference Finals and the finals, this team, it's probably going to win.
I mean, Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid have been playing just about how you expect them. They get Matthias Ekholm back now for the Stanley Cup Final, which is huge. Jake Wallman's been awesome for them. I think he leads the league in like playoffs and plus minus right now, which is what a smart acquisition at the deadline for the Oilers. I mean, Stuart Skinner, like I already said, he's been lights out since he's had to come back.
Corey Perry,
he could probably play another 1 or 2 more years. Especially on the Oilers, where he just has to park it in front of the net and wait for McDavid to get him the puck.
And you know what?
He might be one of the best like net front presences in NHL history.
Dude, he's so good at it. He has perfected it for years. That's how he ended up winning was it the Rocket or Art Ross?
Both
Both in the same season?
Yeah,
What was
and he
it,
won MVP.
08 or
I
07?
think 2009.
Yeah.
Something. Yeah, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, for sure.
He's played more playoff games in his career than every I think almost every NHL team since the year 2000.
Yes, that is correct.
More
I did
than
see
the
that.
Pittsburgh Penguins and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tampa Bay that went to 3 Stanley Cup Finals in a row, which is wild.
That's ridiculous.
Dude's seen everything.
And
I mean,
they also made a finals in, what was it, 2015.
15.
And they also made one. They ended up winning a cup in the early 2000s
Yep.
too.
So yeah, and Pittsburgh's won 3 Stanley Cups.
Yep.
They've been to 4 Stanley Cup Finals. Corey Perry has seen about everything. Another wild thing for him is this is his 5th Stanley Cup Final in 6 years.
Yes.
And he lost all 5.
And you know what? Jeff Skinner had a chance to get his first ring in his first playoff appearance. He got his first playoff goal in Game 5.
We'll see if Jeff Skinner can
Keep up.
continue that, because I'm expecting the Stanley Cup Final to be extremely, extremely physical.
Yes.
I think now we probably transition into talking about the Panthers and the Hurricanes, because that series to me felt like the Hurricanes just did not belong there.
They didn't. They did not at all. You looked at it's right from game 1, actually, right from opening puck drop. It felt like the Hurricanes didn't belong in. It's not that the Hurricanes don't have a good enough roster to be there, but the Panthers, you can tell, are much well built. They have beat the Hurricanes at their own game. And I don't think that this was a year that if you came into the season and told a Hurricanes fan or player like, hey, we're going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals, maybe the Hurricanes players would be like, fuck yeah, man. But a Hurricanes fan, I wouldn't expect it. And there was a quote from Rod Brendamore that really stuck out. And after losing Game 5, he was asked on measuring the disappointment of losing with this achievement of getting to the stage, whatever. And Rod Brendamore, and I quote, "Thank you. Everybody seems to," and end quote, and then start quote again. Like, it's the craziest thing. We're this far, and all we're hearing is negativity from everybody. When I walked in this summer with the pieces that left this organization, I was like, I don't think we're making the playoffs. I was that worried about it because it was such a mass exodus of good players in free agency. We were able to find good players to fill in, but I was like, I don't know if they're that good. But they hung in there. I have nothing but pride for this group. Yeah, we didn't love this series, but that's the standard right there. You're not giving Florida enough credit.
That's a really good quote. I mean, I think he's a little crazy to think they weren't going to make the playoffs.
That's crazy to say that out
I mean,
loud.
you kind of got to have that motivation as a coach. The world against us. Carolina definitely has that mentality when they play. Like, I think they thrive off of people doubting them. But I think he's right. I don't think there is a lot of negative talk about the Hurricanes, and they're not giving the Panthers enough credit for just how good of a team they are.
Yeah, they're such a good team. And I'll get to them. I really want to talk about a certain word that I'll get to when we talk about the finals. But the Panthers are such a good team. Paul Maurice knows how to win games. There was a mic'd up that I saw of Game 5. He's one of those coaches where when it's time to lock in, he'll scream at the boys. But he also, he is one of the players. His hockey lingo, you don't see many coaches be like, yeah, boys, like, that hockey lingo type shit. And he's like that behind the bench. And when he just get the boys going, he goes it. And he just feels like, instead of having a coach that's part of like the team and almost looking like as like, okay, you're on a pedestal because you're a head coach, he's on the level of the players, which I really think the players clearly have bought into his system.
I mean, they have to get the 3 Stanley Cup Finals in a row. If you don't like your coach, then either you have like the greatest team of all time, or you're just getting really lucky.
I think it has been very impressive to see them get this 3 straight Stanley Cup Finals.
Oh, it's tough.
It's so mentally taxing, physically taxing. And this team, the way that Bill Zito has built this team from the ground up, everybody talks about Jim Nill building the stars, but I don't nearly hear enough talk about how Bill Zito built this team. And honestly, frankly, to have the balls to pull off that Huberdeau for Tkachuk trade after
that changed everything for this organization.
That changed the entire franchise.
Yeah, it changed everything.
And now they're going to the 3rd straight Cup Finals appearance because of that trade, single-handedly. Truthfully, I believe this, and I'll die on this hill. If they don't trade for Matthew Tkachuk, don't know if they're in this position.
Yeah, it kicked off everything, because I think he saw that, when they had won the President's Trophy and they lost in the 2nd round, right?
Yeah, the Tampa.
Yeah, they got their ass kicked.
Yeah.
Guys like Matthew Tkachuk there's not many players like that in the league. I mean, I'd argue there's only one. That's his brother.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys aren't available very often, whether it's in free agency or a trade. Usually you draft them and they play for you forever. I'm sure that's what the Senators are hoping with Brady Tkachuk. But then, that lets the other moves he brings in. Sam Reinhart, which was a really great move. I don't think they win the Cups without them. Does a bunch of things. And I think the two great moves he made this year to get him back to the final was bringing in Brad Marchand and Seth Jones.
Yes.
Because those guys have both been amazing for them.
Seth Jones has been one of the best lockdown defenders back there and providing some offense. Marchand is atop the team in points scored right now. And they overwhelmed the Hurricanes so much that in games 1-3, they outscored the Hurricanes 16-4, which is fucking ridiculous, by the way. But they also outscored the Hurricanes 21-10 in the 5 total games. And it kind of felt like in game 4, I don't want to say that they let the foot off the gas a little bit because it was a great game by the Hurricanes.
The Hurricanes pretty much played a perfect game.
They would have had to play like that in 4 games to win, and
it was not capable. I don't think that Carolina had the depth to be able to pull that off.
And we saw in game 5. No, yeah, it was game 5 that they
went up 2-0.
They went up 2-0. Aho with 2 beautiful goals, and you're like, can the Hurricanes force a game 6? And then the Panthers scored 2 goals within 30 seconds of each other, and all of a sudden it's 2-2, and then they take a 3-2 lead.
You can't give the Panthers anything, man. That's what makes this team so tough. Is if you give them anything to cling on to, they will take it.
Dude, there was a mic'd up of just on Paul Maurice, and the way that he's not even phased by the 2-0 lead. He's like, we get 1, boys. They need 3, talking about the series and everything. And that was after they went down 2-0. And he's basically telling the boys, like, listen, we can be down 2-0 right now, but all the pressure's on them. Make them make mistakes. And guess what? The Panthers forced them to make their own mistakes, and then they pounced on the opportunity, and then eventually they ended up winning in Game 5. And that's perfect coaching right there.
I'm curious to see what your thoughts are. There's been a lot of talk about this with Paul Maurice. He convinced Rod Brind'Amour to not go out for the handshake line. He said, Paul Maurice is noted saying this, I don't believe the coach is a handshake for the players. The players played the games. I don't think coaches have any business going in the handshake. And there's been a lot of talk about it. And I see some people saying it's like, oh, it's tradition. Like, it's bullshit. And it's like, well, it hasn't always been tradition that the coaches go out and do that. I think that's a relatively new thing. It always used to just be the players. The coaches would sometimes come out and congratulate the other coaches, and some of them would just leave the game and just walk off the bench, whether they won or lost. And it was always more about the players. Like, what do you think about that?
I think it depends on the coaches. If you're going to do what Paul Maurice did and last second pull the coach off, I think...
I'm surprised he convinced Rod Brind'Amour to do that. I mean, Rod Brind'Amour, he coached him before when he was in Carolina, so they know each other very well, so maybe that's why he was able to convince him.
But also, it seemed like Rod wasn't really all that happy about it happening last second. Because
I don't think he was happy in general, but...
That's true. But also, if Paul Maurice...
that takes balls to convince him. Is like, hey, let's not go out there. Let's let the players do it.
Paul Maurice and Berube did that, but the difference, though, is that before the series, Paul Maurice talked to Berube and asked him, he was like, hey, after the series is over, no matter what, do you want to just do it in front of the bench? And Berube agreed to it, so they did it. And I think he should have did that with Rod. I don't know if Paul Maurice, like he brought up his coaching, maybe he was like, because he's good friends with Rod and everything.
Yeah, maybe he didn't really want to talk to him.
Yeah.
Maybe Rod didn't want to talk to him. Like, he's like, oh, he's trying to get in my head. Fuck him.
Yeah, that could be a thing too. Or maybe he's just sitting there just like, I can convince Rod because I know him so well, and it's just like, whatever, it is what it is. And I don't know. Maybe if the Hurricanes win the series, it's different. Maybe he's like, hey, in a good mood, obviously, because you don't want to lose in the conference finals in 5 games, or just let alone lose in general. But I just think it's based on the situation. I'm of the essence of everybody going the handshake line, and then the coaches are at the end and everything, and then they talk there, whatever, because I'm just a traditionalist in that aspect. But I don't see an issue where it's like, that's bullshit. Like,
I don't really see an issue with it. I think I agree it would have been probably been better if they would have talked about it beforehand, not like a last second thing where, because I remember watching the end of that game and I saw them talking. I was like, what are they talking to each other about? Like, long talk. And I didn't realize at first that the coaches didn't go out there, because I stopped watching. Because I really don't care about watching the handshake line.
I honestly, it made it feel like a bigger deal than what it was, because
The media is just pushing it, and I think they're making a way bigger deal out of it than it actually is.
Quick time out before we get back to the episode, you beauties. As someone like myself who's into fitness and needs a little bit of an extra boost before a lift, or maybe I need just a little bit of energy before my next hockey game, and even when doing pod stuff to bring you guys the best content possible, W always has me covered. Whether you needed to stay awake at work or need a little bit of a jolt to get you through the day, W will always provide you that spark you need. There's no sugar, no crash, no artificial flavors or artificial dyes, just flavored caffeine. 150 milligrams of caffeine in one serving, which is equivalent to 2 cups of coffee. Make sure to head over to w.gg and use code CFB Pod for 10% off any order. Okay, so I'm going to transition over to the Stanley Cup Finals now.
Yeah.
We get a rematch of last year. The Panthers against the Oilers Part 2. Starting this off with, did you see the clip that surfaced with Matthew Tkachuk and Connor McDavid?
I did.
The handshake line. If you guys didn't notice, I'll play it for you guys here.
Well deserved. We'll see you next year. Appreciate it, yeah.
But basically what happened was Matthew Tkachuk told McDavid that they'll see each other next year. And a year later, they're rematching here. And this time, I think the Oilers have home ice advantage in the finals. And this is the first time, I don't know what the timetable is, but the first time in a while that both teams didn't have home ice advantage at all in any series heading into the finals.
This is also the first time Canadian teams had home ice advantage in the Stanley Cup Finals since 2011 when Vancouver had home ice advantage over the Boston Bruins.
Well, the Oilers end up breaking that Canadian playoff drop. We'll see. We'll get to that later. But overall thoughts on this is that the Panthers, they're looking to be the first team to go back-to-back since the Lightning in 2020 and 2021, and then the Penguins in 16 and 17. Before that, it was a while that a team went back-to-back cups.
It feels like it's common now. It's kind of insane.
It does, but also it does feel like Florida they run the NHL. We just saw the Penguins do it, and then 4 years later, the Lightning.
This is the 6th year in a row that they've had a Florida team in the Stanley Cup Final.
Yep. I was kind of hoping that changed low-key because
Me too.
New teams. But, again, if I was a Florida fan, I said this in the last episode, I would love how they're playing. I mean, you go back-to-back Cups Finals appearances. That's very impressive.
And I have no reason to doubt that they wouldn't be a Cup contender next year.
Right.
They have most of their core players locked up. I mean, Aaron Ekblad's probably going to end up walking in free agency. But other than that, they have a lot of their team in place for the foreseeable future.
I'm getting to the word right away. If they win this cup, should there be a consideration for the Panthers to be a dynasty?
Yeah.
If
I mean, they're going to have a chance to make it a dynasty. Would you say dynasty's 3 championships?
I guess it depends.
Because I think so. I think the last dynasty we had was the Chicago Blackhawks.
I want to agree. I think I'm going to agree because now that I'm thinking about this, people were throwing out the dynasty word with the Lightning. And I'm like, they made it to 3 straight finals.
If they would have won the 3rd, yes, dynasty.
Yes. I think they were a fringe dynasty team. They were on the cusp. I think the Panthers, if they make it, have the conversation. But I think if they end up, even if they don't make the finals next year at all, for example, I think winning 3 out of 3 cups or just 3 championships out of 5 seasons, that's a dynasty.
Yeah.
At least minimum. Or like a 4 out of 6 or 4 out of 7, whatever. And like a championships in a short amount of time. But I think that going to 3 straight championships and winning 2 of them and having them be back-to-back, I think that's fringe dynasty. I think they'd have to be one more.
Yeah, I think they'd have to win 3 in 5 years. I think minimum.
Yeah.
For me, if they went 3 and 3, yeah, of course they're a dynasty.
Of course.
But
they have a chance to be a dynasty. This team is not going anywhere anytime soon.
Like I said, they're probably going to lose Ekblad, and they're definitely losing Sam Bennett because he's going to get paid a lot of money, probably too much money.
A team's going to throw $10 million at him.
And yeah, he's going to have to retire in 3 or 4 years because of injuries, because of just how he plays. Hope he doesn't get hurt. I'm not saying I want him to get hurt. It's just he's a very physical player, and those kinds of guys they don't usually age well in the NHL.
And I know Ekblad and Bennett, they're not going to be hard replaces, but Bill Zito always finds a way, and Paul Maurice always find a way. So
yeah, I mean they still have Matthew Tkachuk, Alexander Barkov, Sam Reinhart, Sergei Bobrovsky, like Seth Jones. That's why they brought in a guy like Seth Jones, because you have your Ekblad replacement right there.
Right, and they knew they were not going to be able to retain both Ekblad and Bennett. I think Ekblad, the second that happened, we knew he's gone.
I still think there's a small chance to keep Ekblad. It depends how much money he wants.
Yeah, if he's asking for like north of 8.5, 9.
Another thing you got to remember though, like when Florida has its advantages, there's no income tax.
That's
so
true.
like let's say a team like I don't know, like Buffalo for instance offers Ekblad $10 million a year. Florida could say we'll offer you $8 million, and you're still going to be getting more than you're getting in Buffalo because of no taxes.
Correct.
So that's a big advantage they have.
That is a huge advantage. Back to the finals here. So, going over to the Oilers side, Connor McDavid is going to do anything in his power to will this team to Stanley Cup Finals appearance. Not appearance, he already did. A championship. There's a couple keys in this series that I think for the Oilers. The depth needs to continue playing like the depth. We have seen the depth produce ever since Game 3 of the LA series. They have been fire. Corey Perry, Evander Kane, Connor Braun,
Evander
Matthias
Kane's been
Janmark.
huge for them.
Ever since coming back from injury at the start of the playoffs, he's been phenomenal. Stuart Skinner, he doesn't need to be a ridiculous goaltender. He doesn't need to match Sergei Bobrovsky's flashiness. All he needs to do is just focus on getting W's. Can you make one more save than Bobrovsky in 4 of the 7 games? And number 3, I think this is the most important thing. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, we already talked about. If he plays like how he did in Western Conference Finals, this team's going to win a cup. And McDavid, he doesn't need to go Super Saiyan mode every game for this team to win a cup this year. We saw it in last year's playoffs where him and Bouchard carried the team on their back just to get back down 3-0. I think this series is different. Both of these teams are very much different. Both of these teams, I think, are better than both of their teams last year.
I agree.
So I think this is going to be a much more competitive series because we saw, of course, the 3-0 series lead by Panthers. McDavid wills the teams back, and then Game 7 was very close. If I recall correctly, even though the scores were kind of close in the first 6 games, it felt like the winners of those games really dominated most of the games. And I think
I know, but the games Edmonton won, they kicked the Panthers' ass. Yeah.
So I definitely expect it to be different this year. It's going to be a way more back and forth series.
I think there's a couple things I'd add to that. I think Leon Draisaitl being healthy going into the series makes a big difference because he was not himself last year in the Stanley Cup Final. Clearly,
he was playing with a quite literal broken body.
And I think another big thing that the Oilers have going for them is they have home ice and they have last change. So what was the huge factor last year in games 1 and 2 was Barkov erased McDavid.
Yep.
And that's going to be a really big thing where, because if Edmonton wins one of those 2 games on the road to start the Stanley Cup Final, they win the Stanley Cup last year. And, getting McDavid away from Barkov, and that's how good of a player Barkov is, that he can erase a player like McDavid will be huge because, they see the Barkov line hop up, they're like, oh, McDavid, get off.
And not only that, but also you see that. And even if in Florida, Barkov is out there every time McDavid steps on the ice.
If they win those 2 games at home, it's huge.
Exactly. Even if they go back to Florida, tied 1-1, I'm taking Edmonton 8 times out of 10. And that's no disrespect to Florida. That's just seeing McDavid healthy, seeing Draisaitl healthy, seeing Bouchard healthy, and seeing the way that Stuart Skinner's playing, plus this depth. And also, I preach depth a lot. Seeing Florida's depth, because you have Lois Serenen, who for Florida's sakes, I hope he's healthy for Game 1.
That third line has arguably been the best line of any line in the playoffs.
Marchand's been phenomenal. We've barely mentioned him. He is a great addition at the deadline for just a second-round pick.
Well, I think it's a first now.
Did it get changed with the conditions?
It's a first. I think a 2027 first.
That's a 2027 first for Marchand. It's a steal for how he's playing in the playoffs.
Oh, if they win the cup, who gives a fuck, right?
Exactly.
Fuck
Who
them
cares?
picks.
Fuck them picks. When you're winning Stanley Cups, who cares?
Yeah, but it's going to be I'm really looking forward to this series. I think it's going to be way more intense than it was last year because I think the biggest thing is the Oilers know how close they were last year. Because that was a big thing, too, with the Panthers going to the Stanley Cup Final last year. They had lost the year before to the Vegas, and, they had nobody left. They were playing through so many injuries, but they saw how close they got, and they know how much more now it takes to get to the top of the mountain. And I think, the Oilers last year losing the way that they did, they stormed back from 3-0 down. They forced a Game 7. Game 7 was incredibly, incredibly tight. Edmonton had a ton of chances at the end of the game to tie that game and force overtime. just to sit there and realize like we have to be that much better to get to the top. And I think Edmonton knows what's at stake now.
And bringing up the Florida injuries, like you mentioned, the Florida injuries against Vegas were dismantled. Next year they win the Cup. Edmonton dismantled in 2024. 2025, I mean, history writes itself.
I mean, for the most part, these are two pretty relatively healthy teams.
Yeah.
Zach Hyman missing for Edmonton's going to hurt, and we'll see what the timeline is with Luosterainen. Having that break helps, so we'll see. But for the most part, outside of a couple players, both teams should be at pretty much full strength going into the Stanley Cup Final. You're getting the best on best. I think the biggest thing for the Oilers is going to be if can Stuart Skinner keep up his play, because if he plays like he did at the start of the series against the Kings, the Oilers are probably going to get swept. But, I think with the way Edmonton's playing defensively right now, I don't think it's theoretically possible for Skinner to be that unless he lets in softies.
Dude,
have stats that bad.
I love Draisaitl and McDavid's leadership, especially in this postseason run, because Draisaitl says something about he can win a Selke by himself, but he can't win a Stanley Cup by himself.
Yep.
And by the way, guys, if you guys didn't know, that's him implying that he's defensive first mentality, wins championships, by the way. And also,
he's right.
McDavid earlier in the playoffs mocked he wasn't mocking the reporter that talked to him about it, but mocking the media narrative about them not playing defense. He's like, is that good enough defense? they know, they hear inside the locker room that they don't play
hear
defense.
The chatter.
Yeah, they hear everything, and they've stepped it up. Not only them, but they got the message through the entire locker room, and even through Knoblauch, who Knoblauch has been phenomenal this year. And
Knoblauch so far has been like one of the greatest playoff coaches ever. Just since taking over Edmonton, he inherited a mess when he took over the Oilers, and get the 2 Stanley Cup Finals first 2 years as the coach is incredible.
I think he is one. He's either. I don't think he's the first coach of all time, but it's a very low list of coaches that have reached the Stanley Cup Finals in their first 2 seasons as a head coach.
He might be the only one. There might be 1 or 2 other guys tops.
Yeah.
That they can't be a long list.
No. Give me your predictions for this series.
Well, I said for the first round Oilers in 6, second round Oilers in 6, third round Oilers in 6, and I'm going Oilers in 6 to win the Stanley Cup. I think Connor McDavid is your Conn Smythe winner. A lot of guys in Edmonton, I think you can make a really strong argument for Leon Draisaitl as well, even Evan Bouchard. Those guys have all been terrific, but I think what McDavid does away from the puck and how he leads the team, I don't see how he can't be the Conn Smythe winner.
I have doubted the Oilers the entire year, from the postseason, mid-season, postseason, I don't know.
You said
whatever.
postseason twice.
Postseason twice, whatever. Preseason, I fucking meant, guys. I picked the Oilers to lose in round 1, picked them to lose in round 2, picked them to lose in round 3. However, though, drum roll, please. There is no drum roll, by the way.
He's jinxing them, aren't you?
The Oilers are winning in 7 games.
If they lose, it's your fault.
And I have Connor McDavid winning the Conn Smythe. If the Panthers win the series, call me crazy, I have Brad Marchand.
I think Barkov's MVP.
You think if they win, he's MVP?
Dude, it's another thing. Like, you can look at points, but when you watch Barkov when he's not around the puck, he just does everything right.
Did you see that one play that he had to Verhaeghe? Dude,
yeah,
that was
Verhaeghe just stood
ridiculous.
there. He's like, I don't need to do anything. Barkov will do all the work. Like that's what makes Barkov, the guys like Barkov and McDavid so good, is like they're so great when they have the puck, but the things they do away from the puck is just out of this world. Like I believe it was in round 2 against Vegas. I think it might have been in overtime. It was late in the game or in overtime. Oilers gave up an odd man rush. I think that was the fastest. McDavid got back, probably the fastest I've ever seen him skate, and broke up the 2-on-1, and they end up winning the game. Like, those 2 players are just so incredible in everything that they do, and I think those 2 have been the best players with the puck and without the puck in the playoffs.
The stuff that they do without the puck is arguably more important than with the puck at times.
Yeah.
To be able to create space for your teammates without the puck, to be able to tire out the defense without the puck in the offensive zone, or even in the defensive zone, being on your assignments, knowing what to do, having the awareness to play good defense too from both of those guys.
They just elevate everyone around them. They're arguably the 2 best captains in the league. I think McDavid might be the best captain in the NHL. Just, he's a really good vocal leader. I think he's grown into that captaincy because a lot of he was assigned as he got the captaincy at a very young age. I think his second or third year in the league. sometimes you get the C before you're ready, and you got to grow into it, and you got to learn how to manage the C. And I think McDavid knows what it takes now. He's been in the league for almost 10 years now. I think this is his time.
Yeah, I think this is the year that McDavid finally gets his cup, and then we can end this discourse of, if McDavid doesn't have the cup, should we really consider him the greatest player of all time when it's all said and done? I don't like that discourse, by the way. I don't even like talking about him as the greatest player of all time because he's fucking 28 years old.
Wayne Gretzky, until anyone comes close to any of his records, I mean, I know Ovi beat his goal scoring record, but he's the greatest player of all time. I think McDavid will be in the discussion for top 5 of all time, and he's definitely the best player so far of his era. If we're counting the Crosby era and McDavid era as 2 separate eras.
Is it crazy to me to think that he's a top 3 talent in NHL history?
No, I don't think that's crazy. He might be the most talented player ever.
Because there's a difference between the greatest player of all time, which is Wayne Gretzky, and then the most talented of all time. Wayne Gretzky was not the most talented player of all time.
He was ahead of the curve. He was playing hockey like probably. He changed how the game was played. He was just so smart. He always knew where to go. That's why he has so many assists. He just knew the game so well. He was a master.
And I don't know the exact interview that he brought this up in, or exact words, but he said that at a young age he learned where to be wherever the puck was on the ice. So in the offensive zone, if the puck's in the corner, I'll be at this spot at all times. And he just knew where to be, and the puck always found him. And a lot of people are like, you just get lucky if the puck finds you. No, good players know where to be, and the puck will
Wayne
find them.
Gretzky made his own opportunities.
Yeah.
No, I don't think there'll ever be a discussion for a player, the straight up the greatest all around player of all time, other than Wayne Gretzky, unless McDavid goes on it. I mean, I don't think any player is on even close to being on pace to even come close to breaking any of his points records.
No.
Matthews might have a chance to do the goals, but other than that, I don't see any player ever touching total points or assists.
Nobody's touching assists, and if you get close to assists, you're close to the points record, and neither of those are going to happen, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Let's hop into the news that happened around the league. There's a lot of stuff that has come out, especially as we get closer to July 1st, which is the new NHL season. Let's start off with Marco Rossi. The Wild are very much open to trading him. He's very much open on the trade block. He is a pending RFA at the start of July 1st. And the Wild don't seem to want to pay him as much as Boldy. According to reports, he wants the 7x7, which is what Matt Boldy got. And they don't feel like he's up to par with Matt Boldy. They're coming in around more $6 million, and Rossi isn't about that life.
I mean, I think even paying that, he's been good.
Yeah.
He's still developing. You're kind of when you give him like a $7 million a year contract, you're kind of investing into his future, and and hoping he keeps taking those leaps to become like they did that with Matt Boldy, and it's paid off.
Yeah,
he's their second best player on their team behind Kirill Kaprizov. Yeah, but I can't really necessarily blame the Wild. I think they'll get a decent return from him. I think there'll be plenty of teams interested. I mean, teams have already gotten calls.
Did you see so Tyson Forster ended up re-signing, but right before that with the Flyers, you want to know the offer that they gave the Flyers? They were like, here's Marco Rossi for Tyson Forster and a first-round pick was the minimum asking price.
That's a lot.
If you don't want to pay him, why trade him like a $7 million player? I don't know. That's the same thing that happened with Zegras. But I want to bring up why I want them to pay Rossi as much as Boldy. And I know all you stat people, Boldy had more points. He was close to a point per game in his age 23 season. Rossi just finished his age 23 season. Rossi only had 60 points in 70-something games. Matt Boldy this season, I'm a big analytics guy. I'm sure you know where I'm going with this, Preston. He was in the 48th percentile in overall play, Matt Boldy was, by the way. Offense 46, defense 65. He was kind of mixed in with positive and negatives and goals above replacement. Marco Rossi, in the positives in every single goals above replacement metric, he was in the 91st overall percentile in overall play, 87th percentile in offense, 71 in defense. He's a very underrated two-way center, and I think that he has the potential to be a 1C. I think right now he's more of a 2C. I think the Wild, I look at the Wild, it's like, I don't know if they think that Eriksson Ek is their long-term fit at the first-line center. And I don't know if they look at Rossi as a long-term, like, potential 1C. They might look at him as a 2C, but obviously they're favoring Eriksson Ek, who's a better player in my opinion. But then they also want a first-line center in return, which is it's a little ass because I've talked to wild sources, and I'm a Sabres fan, so they're like, okay, would the Sabres be willing to trade a guy like Tage Thompson for? I'm like, dude, are you fucking out of your mind?
No, that would be insane.
If you're gonna ask for Tage Thompson, you better pay Rossi $9 million at least, and that's just unrealistic. And that's just an example, but like, I have a problem with certain teams, and I already said this. If you're going to trade him like a top guy, pay him like a top guy.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, obviously you want to get as much as you can out of a guy, and if you can get a team to pony up, you know, like a good player and a first-round pick, you take those deals. I mean, obviously, you know, if you call the Sabres and say, we'll trade you Marco Rossi for Tage Thompson, I'd hope the Sabres would just immediately hang up the phone and say, yeah, you're fucking psycho. I think a more realistic trade package with Buffalo would be maybe like a guy like Jack Quinn, some draft picks, maybe Bowen Byram.
I saw a Jack Quinn and a third-round pick for Rossi.
I don't think that would be enough. I think you give a little bit more.
I would pay a decent amount for Rossi if I was any team too, especially a team that needed a young center like him.
Yeah, I mean, you have 5 teams listed here that can trade for Rossi. Philly, I'm not sure if Philly is still super interested. You know, they did just sign Forrester to that extension. If Minnesota is hard set on getting a first-round pick for him, then Philly's definitely not trading a first-round pick.
If a lot of these teams that I have listed on here are non-playoff teams, actually all of them are non-playoff teams. If they want the first-round pick, it is going to be tough for some of these teams to cough up their first-round pick because having the Flyers, the Penguins,
I could
Sabres,
see Pittsburgh doing it.
The Penguins need a guy like Rossi so bad.
Yeah, I could see Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh makes a lot of sense. Chicago, I don't think they would give up a first-round pick. Obviously, they're not giving up the third overall pick. Do they have multiple firsts in this draft? I don't think they do.
No, I don't think so. I'll double check
because I think
that.
they got. I don't think they got. Did they get a first for Seth Jones?
I think they got a second for him.
Yeah.
Because it also, like, if they end up drafting a center third overall, I think they're out of the.
Yeah, we'll see. But Chicago just kind of needs anybody that has some talent on that team right now.
They do have 2 first-round picks. They have their own, and then they have Toronto's.
Yeah, I mean, I could see Chicago totally trading like that second first-round pick, and some other asset, to Minnesota.
And then I also have the Sabres, Kraken, and I think that
Buffalo will make sense if I think Bowen Byram's been available, and it just sounds like it's a matter of when he gets traded, not if.
Yeah.
There's plenty of teams interested in him. I think he could help that Minnesota blue line, and I think honestly that could almost be a 1-for-1 trade, Rossi for Byram.
I wouldn't mind that, but I've brought that up before, and wild people don't want a defenseman for Rossi in return, which
yeah, that's reasonable.
It is.
I'm just trying to make a trade that makes more sense for the Sabres.
That trade makes more sense for them for sure.
I mean, but in a trade, teams got to meet each other both ways.
Yeah.
Because I think now it's a good time to transition into the Sabres stuff with Bowen Byram. They're getting a lot of calls on Bowen Byram in the league. There's a lot of interest in him. Bowen Byram's, for at least in the Sabres situation, is kind of a luxury player to have for a team that can barely, make it by to eat at the table. So, because you have an elite defenseman in Rasmus Dahlin, you have Owen Power who keeps getting better. One elite left-handed defenseman and a potential elite defenseman. Where does Bowen Byram stick in? Because you don't want to force one of them to have to play the right side.
Bowen Byram fits in on another team that needs a left-handed defenseman.
It didn't really make too much sense when the Sabres even traded for Byram.
It didn't either because I didn't feel like of course they improved the blue line, but I didn't think that Bowen Byram was a need.
No, it wasn't. It's a luxury.
And I think it was also Adams and Middlestead. Well, Adams didn't want to sign Middlestead long term. He wanted a long term extension, and they're like, "We're not going to get a deal done here. Let's just trade you 1-for-1 for a defenseman."
I mean, the Sabres, I think, made the right move in trading Middlestat for Byram. Like 1-for-1, I think they won that trade because Middlestat's no longer on the Avalanche.
Yeah, and he hasn't been great. They definitely pounced on his value.
Yeah,
at the time
yeah.
because he was having a career year.
Yeah, he was great for Buffalo that year. He's one of the only players that hadn't regressed that year.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but Bowen Byram, I don't think he'll ever become the player that he can be in Buffalo, right? As behind Dahlin and Power. If it was just Dahlin or Power, yeah, the Sabres are keeping him. But with both of those guys there, you want to give Power a chance to blossom. He's your number 1 overall pick from a few years ago. I think he's got a way higher ceiling than Bowen Byram does at this point, being 2 or 3 years younger than him.
Can I throw something out there real quick? It's
Sure.
completely off track. I'm posting this as a clip out, by the way, so I really hope a lot of people hear this. The people that say that Owen Power should be fucking traded over Bowen Byram, I hope your pillow is warm at night. I hope you stub your fucking pinky toe on a corner of a table because you guys don't watch hockey. Thank you for coming to my rant. I appreciate it.
No, that would be insane to trade Owen Power now.
Yes, to say that he's
Insane.
not developing because he's quote unquote a softie, go fuck yourself.
I will say this until I can't do it anymore. Like when Owen Power is either if he becomes dog shit or he gets too old, I have him on a comparable track and development to Victor Hedman.
Yes.
Very similar kind of player, and Victor Hedman was awful. He took a long time to develop his first few years, and now he's a Hall of Fame defenseman.
Oh my God, it took him. He didn't even develop until halfway through his 5th season in the NHL.
It takes time for defensemen. Like Dahlin wasn't a superstar overnight. Yeah, he had a really good rookie year, and then he took a couple steps back, and then now he's the player that he is today. And no one will disagree that he's a top 5 defenseman in the NHL.
Yeah, it takes a while for these defensemen. Any defenseman to come in.
And from someone who's had season tickets for the Sabres for the last 3 years, I can personally tell you I've seen Owen Power get better.
He has. He positionally and his awareness has definitely gotten a lot better. And
he looks calmer.
He doesn't look as frantic with the puck. Whether it's with or without the puck, you can see him that his vision in the defensive zone, offensive zone, or whether it's the breakout, it's better. He doesn't just try to get rid of the puck. He's patient. He's more confident. And overall, I think he's going to be close to an elite defenseman as you can get when he's in his prime. And who knows, maybe he turns in there. But back to Bowen Byram, though. Sorry, I just wanted to go on that tangent for you fucks. I have 5 teams that could realistically trade for Byram. The LA Kings, Chicago Blackhawks, Columbus Blue Jackets, Pittsburgh Penguins again, and the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah, I think the Kings are definitely a team that would have interest in him. I'm honestly really curious to see what the Sabres are asking for in return because we talked about Byram and the Kings a little bit last week. I thought we had a fun discussion on that. I mean, Chicago, I think they're going to be on everybody. They need quality players. Byram would immediately be their number 1 defenseman right now. Makes sense. Columbus. Is Werenski a right shot defenseman?
He is, and they're losing Provorov to free agency.
Yeah, he's not re-signing. Yeah, that would be a good partner for Zach Werenski.
And I think they have the assets to trade for Byram too.
Yes, they do. They have a lot of good prospects, a lot of draft picks. Pittsburgh, I think, will look for anybody that can help improve their roster right now.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure. I think the biggest thing is what are the Sabres looking for? I think they're looking for a right shot defenseman, for Owen Power to pair with. Because right now that's their biggest issue is they really don't have a good partner for honestly for Power or Dahlin.
They just need to get one right-handed shot, and I think they'd be okay. Because we talked about it
I think they're going to sign 2 defensemen in this off. I think they're going to trade for a right shot defenseman with Bowen Byram, and then probably sign one of the better ones available in free agency. Try to sign one of the better ones.
I can see them taking a run at Ekblad if he hits the open market. I don't think there's going to be any luck with it, but it doesn't hurt to at least call. And if Ekblad's not interested right away, it's like, okay, I respect that. But
yeah, it doesn't hurt to call. But
right.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be in the market for a right shot defenseman. So, I mean, from what I've heard, almost every team has been interested at least a little bit in Bowen Byram. So
I mean, he's a good player. And
so the Sabres are in a unique position where I think they could really maximize a return for him.
I'm curious to see what they get back in return because they need to get a right-hand shot. I wonder if they try to go for like a 1-for-2 deal where they trade Byram for a right-hand shot and then some type of forward or something like that. Because if I'm Kevin Adams,
I'm not asking for draft picks. Yeah.
I was going there. Yeah, no, you're not. You don't want like a second-round pick is like, here's a sweetener for you.
The Sabres need to win now, and they need guys that can contribute to their lineup right now.
And Kevin Adams, he has all the pressure on him. They just brought in Kekalainen. That's how you pronounce it, right?
Jarmo Kekalainen, yeah.
Kekalainen. We'll get to that in a second. And Kevin Adams has 1 more year left on his contract. And if they don't make the playoffs,
he's gone.
He's donezo. And guess who's going to take over? Yarmo. I think it's going to happen.
It's a good transition there. We have a few Sabres things to talk about. There's been a lot of rumors lately. I don't know who even started these rumors that the Sabres were shopping JJ Peterka.
Saravelli.
Fuck, I don't like Frank Spaghetti. But I still don't forgive him for spoiling the whole expansion draft when Seattle came into the league.
So in the Hockey Raiders, whenever something about Frank Saravelli comes out, or like where's another source? If there's not another source, we don't source it as him because he is wrong 95% of the time.
I don't like Frank Spaghetti. I'm gonna keep calling him Frank Spaghetti.
I love that.
But there's rumors circulating around that JJ Peterka was available. That would be fucking insane for the Sabres to trade JJ Peterka. Why would you? He's their second best forward, second or third best forward. Tage is obviously their best player, like best forward, and then you can make an argument for Tucker Peterka being their second best.
Yeah.
He keeps getting better. He's 23 years old.
Yep.
That would be insane to trade him. He's an RFA. It's not like he can walk. If I'm Kevin Adams, and if the conversation, that I've seen people having is like, oh, he doesn't want to be there. I don't give a fuck if he doesn't want to be there. I'm not trading you. Oh, you want to sit out? Okay, then enjoy the year off because I'm not trading you. So you're either playing for the Buffalo Sabres or you are not playing.
Yes, for a player of his caliber, I think it'd be dumb. And okay, so JJ Peterka, offensively, he is a menace. He has point per game potential written all over.
I think he could be like a average 30 goal scorer in the league. Yeah.
He just put up a 60+ point season in a dysfunctional Sabres team. This season, he's going to be a 35 goal, 70 point guy. I can almost guarantee you that. He just keeps getting better.
He's one of the few players on the Sabres that have gotten better every year since they drafted him.
Yes, he's not like this exponential and then he plateaus or declines. He's just been on this linear curve, and there is going to be a season, whether it's this season or his age 25 season, where it's going to go from a linear to now it's an exponential, and he hits like that 85
I think
point
him playing on line with Tage Thompson helps him a lot too. I think, but I just think trading JJ would be so stupid. If you go back and look at the 2020 draft class, if you do a redraft, JJ is probably a top 5 pick.
He's easily top 5. He's arguably top 3.
That was a weird, really, really weird class just in general. JJ ended up being a second round pick. But looking back on it, the Sabres got a very rare steal in the draft.
Was he drafted in the second round?
He was the first pick in the second round. The Sabres traded up to get him.
And
because they couldn't believe he was there too.
That's ridiculous that they got him in the second round.
Yeah.
Granted, it was the first pick, but second round, though. He fell out of the first round. That's crazy. And of course, Darren Dreger shut down those rumblings right away yesterday.
Yeah, good. I mean, I think it would be ridiculous, completely ridiculous for the Sabres to trade JJ Peterka.
And Saravelli also tried to say, he did say that half the Sabres team or a quarter of the team at least is unhappy with going on.
Well, they should be unhappy.
No fucking shit. We could have sourced that.
I'm unhappy. I'm a lifelong fan. I cannot be any more upset about the Sabres.
We could have sat here and be like, yeah, half the Sabres team's unhappy with the results, and we would be fucking right.
I'd be more. Why isn't the whole team unhappy? They should all be pissed that they're on a shitty team.
Yeah. And also, why are we sitting here saying, yeah, the Sabres are looking to trade Peterka because he's disgruntled? You know fucking damn well that Kevin Adams he hasn't done a great job in Buffalo, clearly. But he's not an idiot where he's going to trade his third best player on the team because he's quote unquote unhappy. I don't get it.
Yeah, I hate these bullshit rumors. They honestly piss me off. I think they are going to trade Bowen Byram. I don't think that was a secret. I think there was even rumors at the deadline last year that they were looking to move him, that they don't really see him in their long-term future, and he wants to be in a place where he could be a top pair defenseman long-term, which makes sense for both sides. Honestly, because like I said, if the Sabres don't have Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin, they're keeping Byram.
He would already be signed to a 7x7 example.
Yeah,
7x
exactly.
something like that.
But the Sabres got a lot of work ahead of them in the offseason. I think they're going to be one of the busier teams. And they made their first probably big move of the offseason by bringing in Jarmo Kekalainen as the senior advisor to the general manager, which I guess I'm disagreeing with most people on the internet. And as a Sabres fan, I think this is a great move just to get anybody with some kind of experience, because the Sabres should be hiring as many experienced guys as they can. And I think to have a former GM, yeah, he was the GM of the Blue Jackets. The Blue Jackets are not a great organization. He was probably the best general manager they've ever had.
Well, you also want to know who he hired as an AGM in 2013?
Who?
Bill Zito.
Yeah,
and guess where Bill Zito is now?
And the Sabres also had a chance to hire Bill Zito, and they didn't.
In 2017 or 18?
Something like that. But we can go on and on about the Sabres' mistakes, but I think this is a smart move, just to have a different voice in the locker room. Kekalainen is, he set up the Blue Jackets to have their most successful stretch in franchise history. And you guys say, well, their most successful stretch was getting to the second round. Yeah, it was. And Columbus has always been a really tough sell to get players to want to be there, no matter what. And so you got to be aggressive in getting trades. He trades for Sergei Bobrovsky. He trades for Artemi Panarin. He trades for Matthew Shane. He trades for Seth Jones. All super, super aggressive moves. And yeah, they never won a Stanley Cup. They got to the second round. And, Panarin and Bobrovsky Matthew Shane immediately leaving free agency. It's a really tough place to get players to want to be there. I think that is starting to change now. And I think the biggest thing that changed that was Johnny Gaudreau choosing Columbus. Mm-hmm. And then, Sean Monahan chose to go to Columbus. That's such a sad story, man.
It is. It really is.
I just got a little upset just thinking about that now. But, Sean Monahan's a player who had probably a really big market. He's having a career renaissance right now. And, he chose to go to Columbus, and he was one of their best players. And I think Zach Werenski's there. I think they are a couple pieces away from being a playoff team. But Kekalainen built the guts of that team. And, you can argue, he's also the reason why they were really bad. Yeah, because he made aggressive trades and they didn't work out. But at least he made moves and he got the team to the playoffs.
And you know what I think is going to happen? Kevin Adams, we've heard in the past, can be a little bit shy away from making those very aggressive trades. I think Kekalainen, he's going to go into Adams. If you're on the fence of a trade, fucking pull the trigger. Do it.
Well, especially Buffalo's a tough place to get players to want to be right now in free agency. It's a tough sell. And so when you have players that, necessarily don't have trade protection, good players available, and you have to make a really ballsy trade to get that guy in, you do it. You got to change the culture. If you can get a great player in there, it might cost a lot, but you're getting a lot in return. That's how you change the conversation around your franchise.
Kevin Adams' mindset of drafting and developing clearly isn't working.
I mean, it works to a certain extent, but you have to supplement that with smart free agent signings and smart front office decisions. And I say that's been one of the strengths. I wouldn't say it's Kevin Adams' strength. I think he has some good scouts and some good guys in the front office they've been good at drafting the last few years. It's just the problem is they're awful in trades. They lose just about every trade that they make. They trade a guy and they go on to win a Stanley Cup somewhere else. And they can't get any of the good free agents. He made an aggressive move last year when he traded for Ryan McLeod for Matthew Savoy, which at the time he was getting panned for. It's what a stupid move. You're trading one of your best prospects away for a third line center, and then Ryan McLeod goes on to have a career year with the Sabres, and Matt Savoy can't crack the lineup.
Yeah. I would much rather have our GM get fried 2 months in the offseason for making a stupid trade, and then having
we were cooking him.
Dude,
we thought it was stupid.
We were sitting there. We were getting so unhappy with the trade that Sabres fans were telling us that they hated the negativity. And we were wrong.
I can't blame them. It's very hard to be positive about anything with the Sabres, but that was one trade where Kevin Adams won the trade.
Yep.
And then he traded the second round pick for Beck Malenstein, which I think was so stupid.
That was the worst possible thing. And I think the mindset, if I see Adams' vision with drafting and developing the top guys, especially with missing the playoffs, and then signing third and fourth liners via free agency, or you're going to trade for them, which I don't think is a bad strategy, but also when the playoff drought is at 14 seasons, you can't really be like a Chicago Blackhawks or San Jose Sharks position where you can wait for these guys to develop in the lineup and develop on the roster. You might have to go out and sign a Nikolai Ehlers in free agency if he ends up hitting the open market, etc., or do whatever. And
Yeah.
so I think I think Kekalainen is going to be a nice little guide for Adams, and
And I think another good thing too, let's say it's around December, January, and the Sabres aren't good. You have your next GM in the room already. You just fire Kevin Adams. You get I think this will be Kevin Adams' last season with the Sabres unless he somehow gets them into the playoffs, which I'm still very bullish on. I think it's really important for the next guy to be a guy that's been the GM before and has been around and has respect in the league. You can't just keep hiring, these up and comers or these guys with very little experience. I think, it's been too long. It's not right now. It's not even about winning a cup for the Sabres. It's about just getting into the playoffs.
just get in and then go from there. Baby steps. It's all it takes. It just takes one playoff appearance. Now you know how it is to get there.
I think another big thing you can look at is the Ottawa Senators. Ottawa Senators laughing stock for a very long time. They end up selling the team, and the owner very much cares about the success of that team, and he's willing to spend whatever money he needs to spend to get that team competitive and then make the playoffs.
They're aggressive right away. Go out and trade for Linus Allmark June 27th.
And then they pay him what he wants, And I think
Even
ownership is a big issue with the Sabres as well. As I don't know how much money Terry Bogulla is willing to spend to make the team successful.
And not only that, but also I don't like this notion in the organization of if you don't want to sign long-term, we're trading you or letting you walk.
No, that's bullshit because there's some guys that are maybe never going to want to sign a long-term deal, or there's going to be various reasons. Obviously, if you have a great player and he wants to be there long-term, you find a way to make it work. But it doesn't even make sense as an organizational standpoint to lock up everybody in a long-term. Like Stanley Cup teams do that because they win Stanley Cups, and those players, you see that happen all the time with Cup winning teams. It's the Cup tax.
Yeah.
The Sabres aren't in a position to do that right now. It's like, oh, Jack Quinn, you want to be here? We'll give you an 8x8.
Like that would be crazy. But like you brought up Linus Allmark, Ottawa wasn't sitting here saying we'll give you a 6-year deal. They're like, here's a 4x8, and maybe Allmark asked for 4 years, and Ottawa's like, all right, let's make it work.
Yeah, if you got a guy that's a great player who has a track record that wants to be there, you find a way to make it work.
Yeah, whether it's 2 years, whether it's 8 years.
But part of it has to be from ownership willing to spend the money.
Yeah, of course. Moving on to more restricted free agent news. According to Elliot Friedman from the 32 Toss podcast, the Rangers are testing the RFA market for Keandre Miller.
Please trade him in New York. I've been on the train for years that Keandre Miller can be great. I don't think he'll ever be great in New York.
They are fumbling the bag with Keandre Miller. Fumbling.
Yeah. I mean, the Rangers have just been fumbling the bag with young players. I mean, maybe, with a new coach now, they're a little bit different, but I think it's just the way the organization's set up where they just not have had great success lately in developing younger players.
You even look at a guy like Kaapo Kakko, gets traded to Seattle, balls out, is close to a point per game, at least to start his tenure. Alexis Lafreniere, 28 goals in 23-24. Teams President's Trophy winners get to the Eastern Conference Finals. The next year, Lafreniere doesn't even get the 50 points. He ends up having 17
in his defense,
goals.
most of the Rangers were pretty bad last year.
That is true, but at the same time,
outside of Artemi Panarin, the team wasn't very good.
And I think I can't believe the Rangers did this. They extended Chris Drury. I think it's a general manager issue. You look at the roster. I don't think the roster construction is that well. Panarin has 1 more year left.
They rely a lot on Igor Shesterkin.
Yes, and they also rely too much on special teams. The last 2 seasons, they were bottom 10 in the league in expected goals for percentage at below 50%. And in 23-24, when they won the President's Trophy, they were 21st in the league at 49.9%. And their special teams was top 5 in the league. And this year is top 5 in the league. They are not good at even strength, and I think that has to do with more of the roster construction and coaching than anything else. I think the roster on paper, this might contradict itself. I don't know. But on paper, the Rangers are not a bad team. They're a playoff team at least. But when you look at the product on ice, it's just like, what is going on?
Well, I think Pierre Laviolette was also part of the issue. I think he was suffocating the team. Chris Kreider also fell off a mountain.
Chris Kreider had a horrible season.
If he's on Team USA for the Olympics, because I know Chris Drury's involved with that, he was on Team USA for the Four Nations Face-Off and didn't really do anything for the team. Some Regis Trocheck. Those two guys are on Team USA for the Olympics. I'm going to be pissed.
They better not go into the same strat that they did with Four Nations.
Tage Thompson needs to be on Team USA. I'm not saying that as a Sabres fan. He scored the golden goal in the World Championship games. First gold medal for the World Championships for USA Hockey in 92 years.
He didn't even know how to
He's
celebrate.
not used to winning. He's not used to those moments. Get him in the playoffs, man. Please. I want to see Tage Thompson in the playoffs.
He did his normal celly.
He just put his hands up. That's how I would celebrate.
Yeah. And then he was like, holy shit. And he realized it. And that was... Get Clayton Keller in there too. Those two instead of Troy.
Yeah, you need you need to put some young guys in the Team USA. But getting back to Keandre Miller, I think a lot of teams would be really interested in trading for him. I think Keandre Miller still has a ceiling. I know he's getting a little bit on the older 24, 25-ish now, but I still think.
Did you just call him on the older side at 24, 25?
He's running out of time to develop. That's what I mean.
That's fair. Okay.
Because he's not really. You can't really call him a prospect anymore.
That is true. He's becoming a veteran now.
Because his next contract, he's going to be UFA.
Yeah.
And especially then, he's not a prospect anymore. He's a vet.
That's fair. Okay.
He's been in the league for like 5 or 6 years now. Yeah. So, he's running out of time to hit that ceiling, and I think getting him out of New York would be the best thing for him.
The Rangers probably wouldn't trade him inside the Eastern Conference, but
I think they would try to do the best available return. I don't think they trade him to a rival, but I could see him trading him in the conference.
If I'm Detroit, if I'm Buffalo, I'm calling about Miller, and
the problem with the Sabres with the Miller, is he's left-handed.
It's a left-handed thing, I know, but it's just his potential is there, and I think that Detroit could use a guy like Miller.
Oh, Detroit needs defensemen. Mm-hmm. Detroit makes a lot of sense. I think Detroit's going to be very hard in on Aaron Ekblad as well in free agency, especially because he's literally from like across the river in Canada, in Windsor.
Is Seider left or right-handed? He's right-handed?
I have no idea.
I'm going to check that because now I'm curious.
But the Red Wings should be interested in Ekblad nonetheless.
They should be interested in anybody.
They need to completely revamp their D-core. That was a big reason why they haven't made the playoffs too, is their D-core is awful.
And their goaltending
is awful. You can't just have Mo Seider and have... They have Jeff Petrie, right?
Yeah.
Jeff Petrie,
Ben
Sherratt, Justin Hall. Not a great defensive core. No. You got to get Mo Seider some help. And then, speaking, probably our last thing we'll talk about is, this kind of caught me off guard, is Jonathan Toews is 100% committed to coming back to the NHL. Hasn't played in 2 years. I'm sure he'll probably get a PTO. See how he is at training camp, but I'm pretty bullish on him being able to play.
Why does this scream going to a top tier contender and playing 4 or 5 minutes and playing like 10 minutes a night and just going out there for important offensive and defensive zone draws?
I mean, I think that's what he is at that point in his career. He hasn't played in 2 years. Mm-hmm. We'll see. I think I could see a team like Panthers, Tampa Bay, Edmonton,
Vegas,
those cup contenders, giving him a PTO in training camp. Seeing if he still got the legs to play in the NHL, and if he does well, he can still. I think he's smart enough to contribute to a team. Still, he's just got to see if his body can keep up with it. Still,
honestly, he'd be a really good player coach.
Yeah, he would. But I mean, he wants to play, and I think he's going to give it a go and see if he can still do it. And obviously, if he gets, I think he'll get a training camp invite for a team. Probably most likely a contender that's looking to sign a guy like that on a cheap deal because it'd be for the minimum.
Yeah. He's not going to want to go to a bottom feeder team.
He's not going back to Chicago.
He's not going back to Chicago. We can put that to rest.
Yeah.
Didn't even start. But
though I think that'd be great for Connor Bedard.
I think it'd be phenomenal too.
But he ain't going back to Chicago.
I mean, if there is one bottom feeder team, I guess Chicago, but he's not. He's going to a contender.
If he was just dead set and just playing for any team, yeah, if Chicago called him, yeah, he'd go back. But I think he's going to, like a team like Florida, Tampa Bay, Edmonton, Vegas. I think Carolina could even take a squeeze on him for be a fourth line center. Carolina is going to have a busy offseason. They have a lot of money to spend, actually.
Carolina?
Yeah.
Carolina has a lot of money.
And they got to revamp their forward depth. It's going to be a very, very, very interesting offseason. I think we're going to see a lot of money being thrown around. I think one of the most disastrous draft classes I ever remember being was the 2016 draft class, where the cap went up by a lot. And I don't think there was any good contract signed in that free agency class.
Is everything overpaid?
Everything overpaid, all long-term deals. A lot of players ended up getting bought out. I think the most infamous contract from that free agency class is David Clarkson. Oh, he signed a long-term deal with the Maple Leafs. I think he made it a year into the contract.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, so I don't. There's not a great free agency class, but with the cap going up by so much the next few years, there's going to be a lot of money getting thrown around.
There's gonna be a Marner $14 million. Besser's probably gonna get 9. Ekblad will probably get 8 to 9. You're gonna have a Bennett get 10 from somebody.
Someone's going to overpay Sam Bennett.
I can feel it in my bones. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And it's not a strong free agency class, but because it's not strong, you're gonna have teams overpay, especially with the cap going up. Hey, we have an extra $3 million to spend. Let's throw an extra million.
We'll see in 3 years how many of those guys are still on that team.
That's true. I am intrigued to see how teams handle the cap going up dramatically over the next.
I think for
years.
big market teams, you're going to just see them spend a lot more money. I think Toronto's going to spend a lot more money. I think Vegas, they're always right on the cap, spend a lot more money. Edmonton, it's going to be a haven for those elite teams.
Vegas is reportedly in on Marner.
Doesn't surprise me. The Vegas is always in on the top guys. You can never count them out. Like, even at the trade deadline when they have no assets to trade, you can't cut them out. Obviously, they got to re-sign Jack Eichel. I think that's probably the GM also said that's priority number 1 this summer is getting Eichel, re-signed. And I don't think they'll run into any issues with that.
No, they won't be. I'm excited for the offseason overall. We're going to have a lot of coverage for it, and I think it's going to be very chaotic.
I'm very excited for the Stanley Cup Final. It's going to be like a movie, honestly. I'm expecting it to be in a very intense series.
It's going to be very tight.
I'm going to be really upset if it's like a 5 or 4 game series.
Dude, if it's anything less than a 7-game series, I'm going to be kind of upset.
These playoffs haven't really been great.
No.
Outside of like a couple, like I thought Winnipeg and St. Louis, specifically Game 7 was bonkers. Colorado, Dallas, Game 7 was also crazy. Outside of that,
all the good series were in the Western Conference in the first round.
The second round wasn't super competitive. The Oilers kind of ran over Vegas. They ran over Dallas. Carolina, Washington was probably the worst series to watch in the whole playoffs.
No, I think the Devils in Carolina was worse.
I don't know. At least the Devils could score a little bit. Washington couldn't do anything. I don't know. This compared to last year's playoffs, these playoffs have been kind of disappointing.
They have been. I want to do one last thing. I almost forgot about this.
Okay.
Because it's our Stanley Cup Finals preview, I'm going to have you blind rank Stanley Cup teams. So I have 5 of them. I have them since 2010. So I have 5 Stanley Cup teams since 2010.
Okay.
First up on the list is going to be the 2023 Vegas Golden Knights.
3.
2019 St. Louis Blues.
4.
2014 LA Kings.
2.
2024 Florida Panthers.
5.
2021 Tampa Bay Lightning.
1. They were nasty.
You got that. I tried to save and kind of mess you up, but you had it perfectly. I'll give you props for that.
I thought you were going to say 2015 Blackhawks, and that would definitely have been number 1.
I did not want to add any of the Blackhawks teams. That was for sure. And I wanted to throw in one Tampa team, but
that was probably the best Tampa team.
That was, yeah. I could have gone with 2020, but they were also sick nasty too.
They were better in 2021 though.
Yeah, they were. That team was unbeatable.
I think you can make an argument for LA at number 1 too. The 2014 that Kings team was really good too.
Yeah. Either way though, your list was spot on in my opinion. That's going to end it for today's episode. If you guys enjoy all of our content, make sure to subscribe and notification bell down below, as well as more exclusive content in our description. And we'll see you guys in our next episode.